The letter sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I finally opened it. Something about that law firm's letterhead made my stomach twist, maybe because the last time I'd seen it was after Mom's funeral 2 years ago. I'd thought we'd handled everything then. Apparently not. My name is Cass, and that unopened envelope was about to change everything. "Just open it already," Jack said, reaching for it. I snatched it away, earning an eye roll from my husband. "It's probably nothing, babe. Maybe some paperwork they forgot." But I knew my mother. She never forgot anything. When I finally tore it open, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the check that fluttered out. I blinked at the numbers, sure I was seeing things wrong. "Holy shit," Jax whispered over my shoulder. $250,000? The accompanying letter explained everything. Mom had set up a secret account years ago, building it slowly with her savings. She'd left instructions for it to be delivered to me 2 years after her death. "When you're ready," the letter said. "This is incredible." Jax's eyes were bright with excitement as he paced our kitchen. We could finally start that business I've been talking about. The timing couldn't be better. I barely heard him. My eyes were fixed on Mom's familiar handwriting at the bottom of the letter. "For your future security, my darling girl. Use it wisely." "Cass? Are you listening?" Jax's hand on my shoulder startled me. "We need to talk about investing this properly." I need some time to process this," I said, folding the letter carefully. Mom clearly wanted me to think carefully about how to use it. Something flickered across Jax's face. Frustration? Worry? It was gone before I could be sure. "Of course, take your time," he said smoothly, but his fingers drummed restlessly against the counter. "Just don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come around every day." That night, I couldn't sleep. While Jack snored beside me, I kept thinking about Mom's words. Security. She'd always been big on that, especially after Dad left. But there was something else nagging at me, the way Jax's whole demeanor had changed when he saw that check. Like a switch had flipped. I rolled over, studying his face in the darkness. After 5 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything about him. But the way he'd reacted to the money, it was like seeing a stranger wearing my husband's face. Maybe Mom's timing wasn't just about me being ready. Maybe it was about being ready to see what was right in front of me. It started with little things. A phone call that made Jack step outside to answer. A laptop screen that snapped shut when I walked into the room. The way he'd started checking his phone first thing in the morning, before even saying hello. I might have ignored it all if it weren't for that damn inheritance burning a hole in my account. "He's been pushing hard about the business idea," I told Marin over lunch. My best friend's fork paused halfway to her mouth, her expression shifting from casual to concerned. "What kind of business?" she asked, setting her fork down. "That's just it. He keeps changing the details. First, it was a restaurant franchise, then some tech startup. Now it's something about cryptocurrency." I pushed my salad around my plate. And every time I ask for specifics, he gets defensive. Marin leaned forward. "Have you checked your joint accounts lately?" The question hit me like a slap. Why would I need to? Because people don't usually get that squirrely about money unless something's wrong. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Jax's desk while he was at work. The first 2 drawers held nothing unusual. The third was locked. My hands were shaking as I used the spare key we kept for emergencies. Inside, buried under old warranties and manuals, I found a bank statement from an account I'd never seen before. The balance was deep in the red, with multiple overdraft fees. I was still staring at it when I heard the front door open. "Cass?" Jax's voice carried up the stairs. "You home early?" I shoved the statement in my pocket and closed the drawer, my heart pounding. "Up here." I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just organizing some papers." He appeared in the doorway, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "In my office?" I was looking for the house insurance documents, I lied, watching his face carefully. "Remember? For the renovation quote?" "Right." He relaxed slightly, but something in his posture remained guarded. "Find what you needed?" "Not yet." I met his gaze. "Actually, I found something else. Care to explain this?" I pulled out the statement. The color drained from his face. "You were going through my private things?" "Private things." I felt my voice rise. We're married, Jax. Since when do we keep financial secrets? It's not what you think, he said quickly. It's just a temporary situation. Once we get your inheritance invested properly. My inheritance? The pieces started clicking into place. Is that what this is about? You're in trouble, aren't you? His expression hardened. You know what? I don't have to explain myself to someone who sneaks around going through my stuff. Where's the trust, Cass? As he stormed out, I stood there, the statement crumpled in my fist, wondering the same thing. Where was the trust? And more importantly, had it ever really been there at all? Silas O'Neill's office smelled like old coffee and printer ink. He didn't look up from his computer when I walked in, just gestured to the chair across from his desk. The private investigator had the kind of face that had seen too much and expected the worst. Mrs. Mercer, he said finally, turning his screen around. You might want to brace yourself. The numbers on the screen made my stomach lurch. Credit card debt, personal loans, failed investments, all in Jax's name, all hidden from me. But it was the most recent transaction that made my blood run cold, a transfer request for $200,000 to an offshore account, dated just days after my inheritance arrived. He hasn't moved the money yet, Silas said, watching my face. But he's laying the groundwork. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Edith. Darling, I've had another fall. Coming to stay for a few days while I recover. Jax is picking me up now. Perfect timing. Too perfect. There's more, Silas said, sliding a folder across the desk. Your mother-in-law's been making some interesting calls. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Phone records showed dozens of calls between Edith and Jax, always late at night, always when I was asleep or at work. The timing matched perfectly with when my inheritance was announced. They're working together, I whispered. Smart girl. Silas leaned back. Question is, what are you going to do about it? My phone buzzed again. Jax, Mom's settled in the guest room. She's pretty shaken up. Maybe we should talk about having her stay longer? Could use that inheritance to add an in-law suite. The pieces clicked together like a twisted puzzle. Edith's sudden illness, Jax's desperate need for my inheritance, the secret phone calls, they weren't just trying to steal my money. They were trying to trap me. I need copies of everything, I told Silas, standing up. And I need to know how to protect my assets. Fast. He nodded, already printing documents. Word of advice? Don't let them know you're onto them. People get desperate when they're caught. As if on cue, I heard Edith's voice in my head from our last family dinner. Family takes care of family, dear. No matter what. I thought of Mom's letter, for your future security. She'd known, maybe not the specifics, but she'd known I'd need protection someday. Not just from the world, but from the people closest to me. Walking out of Silas's office, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but something harder was crystallizing around it. Something that felt a lot like revenge. You need to get out of that house. Marin's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white around her coffee cup. We were sitting in her backyard, away from prying ears and watchful eyes. At least until you figure out your next move. I watched a bird hop across her garden fence. Edith's watching my every move. Yesterday, she accidentally opened my bank statement. Jesus, Cass. Marin set her cup down. What did Silas say about protecting your accounts? He helped me set up new ones yesterday. But I pulled out my phone, showing her the text from Jax. We need to talk about the inheritance tonight. Time to make some decisions. He's getting desperate, Marin said. And desperate people do desperate things. I finished her sentence, remembering how I'd caught Jax in my home office that morning, claiming he was looking for stamps. Near my financial documents. My phone buzzed again. Edith, darling, I made your favorite dinner. Family meeting tonight? They're closing in, I whispered, more to myself than Marin. Stay here tonight, Marin said. Tell them you're working late on a project with me. I started to respond when another text came through. This one from Silas. New information. Urgent. Come to my office now. The pit in my stomach grew deeper. I have to go. Cass? Marin caught my arm as I stood. Whatever you're planning. Be careful. People like Jax and Edith? They don't just steal money. They steal pieces of you. 20 minutes later, I sat in Silas's office, staring at documents that made my earlier discovery seem trivial. Bank transfers, loan applications, forged signatures, my signature. He's been planning this for months, Silas said quietly, before your mother's inheritance was even announced. The timing wasn't coincidental, they knew it was coming. My hands started shaking. How? Your mother-in-law works part-time at the law firm that handled your mother's estate. Different department, but he let the implication hang. The betrayal felt physical, like a knife between my ribs. What happens if I confront them? They'll deny everything. And they've covered their tracks well enough that proving it legally would be. He paused. Challenging. I thought about Mom's letter, about security, about protection, about how sometimes the biggest threats come wrapped in familiar smiles and family dinners. Then I won't confront them, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Not yet. First, I need them to think they're winning. Silas raised an eyebrow. That's dangerous ground. So is underestimating me. I stood up, my mind already racing with plans. They want to play family? Let's play. I set my trap over breakfast, watching Edith spread jam on her toast with trembling hands that somehow never spilled a drop. Perfect control masked as weakness, just like everything else about her. I've been thinking about what you said, I began, stirring my coffee. About family taking care of family. And paused mid-spread. In the corner of my eye, I saw Jax's shoulders tense. The guest room here is so small, I continued. But your house has all that space. Maybe we should consider moving there instead? The toast hit the plate with a soft clink. You'd do that? Edith's voice wavered with practiced vulnerability. We couldn't possibly, Jax started, but Edith cut him off. Don't be silly, Jackson. It makes perfect sense. Her eyes gleamed. And with Cash's inheritance, we could renovate the entire East Wing. I watched Jax's face carefully. There it was, that flicker of panic before his smooth mask slipped back into place. Mom, that's her money. We can't. But we're family, I interrupted, using Edith's favorite weapon against her. And family shares, right? Of course they do. Edith reached across the table, patting my hand. Her fingers were ice cold. We'll make it beautiful, darling. Just leave everything to me. Later that night, I found Jax in his office, phone pressed to his ear. Running out of time, he was saying. The bank's getting impatient. No, you don't understand. He froze when he saw me. Got to go, he muttered into the phone. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine. He attempted a smile. Just work stuff. Listen, about moving to Mom's. You don't seem excited about it. It's not that. He ran a hand through his hair. It's just. Maybe we should wait. Think it through. But your mother seemed so happy. I stepped closer, watching him squirm. Unless there's something you're not telling me? His phone buzzed, another text from his creditors, probably. I'd seen the threatening messages on his screen when he wasn't looking. Nothing to tell, he said quickly. Too quickly. I just think we're rushing things. I nodded, pretending to accept his lie. But as I left his office, I sent a quick text to Silas. They took the bait. Time for phase 2. My phone lit up instantly with his response. Be careful. They're getting desperate. Standing in the hallway, I heard Jax resume his phone conversation, his voice tight with stress. In the kitchen, Edith hummed while washing dishes, probably already planning how to spend my inheritance. They thought they were playing me. But Mom had taught me well. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served with a smile and a cup of morning coffee. I laid out the evidence on our dining room table like a museum exhibit of betrayal. Bank statements, forged documents, phone records, everything Silas had uncovered. The front door would open any minute. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Jax walked in first, followed by Edith. Their easy smiles died when they saw me. What's all this? Jax's voice was carefully neutral, but his eyes darted between the papers. Funny story, I said, holding up a loan application. I apparently bought a boat last month. Except I didn't. Edith stepped forward, her frail act forgotten. Kasha, dear. Don't. I turned to Jax. How long were you planning to wait? Until after you drained my inheritance. It's not what you think. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I was going to pay it all back. I just needed time. I picked up another document. Like the time you spent planning this with your mother? While she was working at Mom's law firm. The color drained from Edith's face. You ungrateful little. Mom, don't. Jax's mask finally cracked. Cass, please. I can explain everything. Can you explain this? I pulled out my phone, playing the recording I'd made of his conversation with the loan shark. His face went ash-white. You recorded me? Like mother, like daughter-in-law. I smiled at Edith. Isn't that what you always say? Suddenly, Jax lunged for the papers, but I was ready. What I wasn't ready for was Edith's surprisingly strong grip as she grabbed my arm, sending us both stumbling. The table crashed over, scattering documents everywhere. You think you're so clever, Edith hissed, her mask completely gone. But you have no idea what we're capable of. Actually, I do. I pulled free, backing toward the door. The police do too. They're very interested in those forged documents. You wouldn't, Jax whispered. We're family. Family? I felt something break inside me. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't manipulate and lie, and we did it for you. Edith's voice rose hysterically. To keep you close, to make us whole again. I looked at them, really looked at them. Jax, desperate and cornered. Edith, her careful facade shattered to reveal the ruthless manipulator beneath. My perfect, precious family. The police will be here in 10 minutes, I said quietly. I'd use that time wisely. As I walked out, Edith called after me. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're doing. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was throwing away my only chance at family. But as I got in my car, hands finally starting to shake, I heard Mom's voice in my head. Security isn't just about money, darling. It's about knowing who you can trust. And sometimes, security means walking away. The envelope arrived 3 days after Jax's arrest. No return address, just my name in Edith's precise handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a key I recognized to her safe deposit box. I shouldn't have gone. Silas warned me it could be a trap. But something in the letter's tone, the raw desperation beneath Edith's usually controlled words, drew me to the bank like a moth to flame. The box contained another letter and a stack of old photographs. My hands froze when I saw the top one, Jax as a child, standing beside a man who looked exactly like him. His father left when Jackson was 12. I spun around. Edith stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow without her usual armor of perfectionism. He cleaned out our accounts, she continued. Left us with nothing but debt and shame. Sound familiar? That doesn't justify. No. She stepped closer. When history repeats itself, you either become the victim or the survivor. I taught Jackson to survive. You taught him to steal. To lie. I taught him to protect himself. Her voice cracked. But he's still going to prison, isn't he? Just like his father. I looked down at the photo again. Why show me this? Because you need to understand. She pulled out another envelope. This is everything. Account numbers, passwords, records of every transaction. Enough to ensure Jackson serves maximum time. My heart stopped. Why would you give me this? Because you have a choice. Her eyes met mine. Use it to destroy him completely, or help him. The money's still there, most of it. We could return it, make things right. He doesn't have to become his father. I stared at the envelope, feeling its weight, not just in papers, but in choices, in consequences, in the power to shape someone's fate. You're manipulating me again, I whispered. Yes. Her honesty startled me. But this time, I'm giving you the power to choose. Revenge or redemption. Which would your mother want for you? The mention of Mom hit like a physical blow. I thought of her letter, about security. But maybe security wasn't just about protecting yourself. Maybe sometimes it was about being strong enough to break the cycle. I'll need time to think, I said finally. Edith nodded, turning to leave. At the door, she paused. We're more alike than you think, Kasia. We both learned to survive. The question is, what do we do with that strength? I watched her go, the envelope heavy in my hands, wondering if revenge and redemption were really as different as I'd thought. 6 months after everything fell apart, I found myself back at Mom's favorite coffee shop, sitting at our old table. The inheritance she'd left me was mostly intact. I'd used some of it to help return what Jax had stolen, but kept enough to honor her wish for my security. Marin slid into the seat across from me, eyeing the envelope in my hands. Another letter? From Jax. I hadn't opened it yet. Like the 3 before it, it had come from the minimum security facility where he was serving 18 months. Edith says he's different now. Attending therapy, confronting his past. And you believe her? I traced the envelope's edge. She's different too. Started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other survivors of financial abuse. Ironic, right? Life usually is. Marin leaned forward. Are you going to read it? The letter felt heavier than paper should. You know what's strange? I thought revenge would feel better. More final. But helping them make restitution, watching them actually change, it's more complicated than revenge. More real. I finally opened the letter, scanning its contents. My breath caught. What is it? Marin asked. He's writing a book. About financial abuse, manipulation, the cycles we inherit. I looked up. He wants my permission to include our story. Well, yeah. I folded the letter carefully. You know what Mom used to say about security? That it's not just about having enough money, it's about being secure enough in yourself to make hard choices. Sounds wise. Marin smiled. Like mother, like daughter. I thought about Edith's words in the bank that day, about survivors and victims. About how sometimes the hardest part of surviving isn't the fight itself, but what you choose to do with the strength it gives you. I'm going to say yes, I decided. To the book. But I want to write my own chapter. About revenge? About choice. About how sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone, it's about being strong enough to help them change. Marin reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Your mom would be proud. Later, walking home, I passed the bank where everything had started to unravel. Through the window, I saw mother and daughter, heads bent together over some paperwork. The daughter looked worried, but the mother's face was determined, protective. I touched Mom's locket around my neck, thinking about inheritance, not just money, but the strength we pass down. The wisdom that grows through generations. The security that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in what we destroy, but in what we choose to build from the ashes.